Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about northern Ukraine. According to information we have, the Ukrainians were forced to redeploy some forces from Kursk directions to the border with Belarus due to the risk of being attacked from Belarusian side, maybe even with the use of the Russian forces. According to information we have, the Ukrainians concentrating their forces in Rovne region and to the north of Kiev, trying to prevent any attacks from the side of Republic of Belarus. Now let's talk about Kursk direction itself. As you can see, we have adjusted the map because we had additional updates and reports from the ground that allow us to make the changes on the ground. First, let's talk about the village of Snagast. The Russian sources reported that as a result of counteroffensive operation, the Russians managed to restore control over this village, but yet without any geolocations that can confirm this. So for now we're going to keep the area as is, as a contested area. We're not saying that this territory is under Ukraine control, but either we're not saying that the territory is under complete Russian control. Most likely there are still very heavy clashes, or maybe not. Now let's move further. Let's talk to the northern Kursk direction. As you can see, we have adjusted the map and we have added significant territories under complete Ukraine control. So what did happen? First of all, the Russian sources published a lot of videos from this part of the direction. The Russians during the previous 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, continue bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions and forces in these forests, between these forests. And as a result of these attacks, we made a decision, we made the conclusion that this territory most likely is populated by the Ukrainian forces. Furthermore, we have additional video a little bit to the southwest. In this video we can see the Ukrainian tank that was moving towards the Russian positions, or towards the village of Semyonovka, or towards the village of Stepnyukhovka. We don't know for sure. The only thing we know that at some point the Ukrainians abandoned their tanks, and then this tank was attacked by the Russian Lancet, and as a result of attack the tank was completely destroyed. This is enough of evidence to make adjustments on map in this direction as well. Furthermore, I'll remind you that during the previous few days the Russians were bombing this territory not just once. There were like few more videos from the same area. On the 10th of August the Russians published the video how they managed to discover the Ukrainian convoy exactly in this point, and then the Russians attacked this territory with Iskander. So too many geolocations from these directions gave us the understanding that most likely these territories under complete Ukraine control. Furthermore, now let's talk about the village of Zhuravli. If you remember yesterday, the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported, and we've been discussing this during the previous video, that the Russians attacked the positions of armored forces of Ukraine between the villages Tolpina, Obshy Kolodys and Zhuravli. So in this triangle, according to the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation, they managed to discover the concentration of Ukrainian forces. And today, on the 12th of August, we got geolocations that confirm this information. In this video, we can see the concentration of Ukrainian vehicles that most likely were abandoned by the Ukrainians. Most likely the Ukrainians have already stretched their forces and captured additional positions in the vicinity of this forest. Most likely the Ukrainians managed to capture the village of Zhuravli itself, and when the Ukrainians abandoned armored vehicles, the Russians start hunting and destroying them, and including not just them but also some positions along the tree lines. Most likely these tree lines also were captured. So based on this video we have adjusted the map and we have added additional territory under complete Ukraine control, and we're talking about the village of Zhuravli. Furthermore, most likely the Ukrainians, as a result of clashes during the previous days, managed to establish complete control over the village of Krymianoye and probably over the village of Olgovka. But then the Russians conducted a counter-offensive operation, and as a result of Russian counterattack, the Ukrainians were completely defeated in the villages and were forced to fall back. We have the video. We will not watch this video. We will not open this video due to significant losses and casualties among the Ukrainian soldiers. But anyway, this video confirms that the Russians conducted a clearing operation and returned control at least over this part. We don't know for sure what exactly is happening right now. Maybe the Russians continue advancing, forcing the Ukrainians to fall back. Maybe the Ukrainians conducted a series of counterattacks with the purpose to stabilize the situation and to return control over these villages once again. Anyway, in the vicinity of Lyubimovka, we have the video of how the Russians continue bombing and attacking the concentration concentration of Ukrainian forces in this forest as well. So as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 geolocations from the northern direction that confirms Ukrainian control over significant territories in this direction. So let's move further. Now let's talk about additional situation on the ground. The Russian sources, for now, we can't say that they are very reliable, but the Russians are saying that they managed to conduct a counter-offensive operation in direction of Alexandria, and as a result of this attack, the Russians restore control over these villages. But for now, we are not going to change the map. We're just discussing the reports that we received during the previous 12 hours. Furthermore, we got additional updates among this main road between the edge Ukraine positions and, let's say, the mainland. In this video, we can see the Ukrainian soldiers who left their armored vehicle with the purpose to take off the sign. This person who was making video reported that he wanted to take off this sign of Russian populated cities, and then he wanted to sell this sign, but something went wrong and he basically couldn't take this sign off. In this video, we can see the moments how the Ukrainians were evacuating the abandoned Russian vehicles that the Russians abandoned during the first days of clashes in Sudzha direction, and we have a lot of prisoners of war that were captured in this area as well. Now so everything is clear to us about the northern flank and about the western flank. Now let's talk about the central flank, and we're going to talk about the village of Sudzha. We have a lot of very interesting videos, a lot of very interesting geolocations. So first, let's talk about these videos. In this video, we can see the Ukrainian soldiers who were also staying and making a selfie right in front of the main, let's say, main sign of the city of Sudzha, and this video confirms the Ukrainian presence in this area. Later, we got additional video that was published by the Ukrainians. In this video, we can see the Ukrainian military forces that were moving along the main roads in the Sudzha area. Basically, this vehicle was moving along the circle road, along the ring road of Sudzha, and this video also confirms complete control over this territory by the Ukrainians. The vehicle started moving in this area, and the vehicle reached this small intersection of roads. Furthermore, we got additional video also from the Ukrainians from the city of Mirny. In this video hasn't been uploaded. In this video, we might see the movements of Ukrainian vehicles also along this street. This video confirms a strong control over this territory by the Ukrainians. So based on these videos, we are going to keep the current configuration of the map, and we are not going to change anything. During the previous night, the Special Forces Akhmatov Armed Forces of Russian Federation published the video of how they were attacking and fighting with the Ukrainians in this point. Currently, we don't know for sure when exactly this video was made. For now, we're not going to change the map because it's very difficult to understand how exactly the Russians managed to get there. We need more details, more evidence, and if we receive additional updates, we will adjust the map and we will return the central part of Sudzha and the eastern part of Goncharovka under complete Russian control, because maybe this territory is under the Russians. Now let's talk about Martynovka. During the previous 12 hours, 24 hours, there were very heavy clashes between the Russians and the Ukrainians, and according to information we have, by the morning of the 11th of August, so yesterday in the morning, the Ukrainians had control over this village and they were trying to dig in deeper. But as I understand, the Russians concentrated and collected some reinforcements and reserves of 155th Division in the vicinity of the village by the name of Pushkarne. And first, the Russians conducted a reconnaissance in combat operation, and during the previous 24 hours, we got the video of how the Russians were moving exactly in this part of the village, which confirms that the Russians managed to enter. But later, the Ukrainian sources reported that after this reconnaissance operation, the Russians fell back towards Pushkarne, so probably to get additional forces, additional reserves, and then to begin everything to start everything from the beginning. And later, the Russians conducted another offensive operation towards the southern part of Martynovka through the village of Mykolaievka. And the Ukrainians are saying that the Russians were pretty successful, and the Ukrainians, as a result of very short combat clashes, were forced to fall back towards the village of Cherkasskaya Porechная, so in this direction. And according to information we have, currently this territory, this small, let's say, artillery pocket is under complete Ukraine control, and Martynovka is under complete Russian control. So this is the situation. Now let's move further. Let's talk about the eastern flank of Sudzha direction. Today, if you remember yesterday, the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation reported that Ukrainians broke through the border between Russia and Ukraine in the vicinity of the village by the name of Ozerki, and then the Ukrainians were moving further, and Ukrainians were stopped somewhere in the vicinity of Ivanovsky. And today the Russian sources published the video of that process. The video was geolocated. In this video we can see a single Ukrainian personnel carrier that was moving from Sudzha towards the deep inside of the territory of Russian Federation, and probably this is exactly the attack that was later stopped in the vicinity of Ivanovsky. Based on this video we have adjusted the area, added additional contested area. Maybe this is the wrong, let's say, contested area. Maybe the Ukrainians were moving through Ozerki from the southern part. We don't know for sure, but for now let's keep as is, and we need more details and to make additional changes on the ground. Furthermore, we have a report that the Russians continue bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions inside of Sumy. As a result of reconnaissance operation, the Russians are saying they managed to discover the headquarters of Ukrainian forces inside of Sumy, and as a result of missile strike, that underground bunker was destroyed. Furthermore, the sources reported that the Ukrainians began offensive operations towards the village in the vicinity of by the name of Kolatilovka. Currently, we don't know for sure whether the Ukrainians managed to enter this territory or not, and whether this is another full-scale offensive operation from the Ukrainian side, or it's just a reconnaissance in force to discover whether the Russians are there or not. I'll remind you that a few days ago the Ukrainians have already entered the village of Paros, and as a result of this attack the village was captured by the Ukrainians. Later the Russians reported that the Ukrainians left the village, but we don't know for sure because we don't have any geolocations that confirm that the Russians restore control over this territory. Anyways, understand the situation hasn't been finished, hasn't been stabilized completely. The Ukrainians still have lots of options, lots of opportunities to attack the Russians, and most likely during the next days we are going to see a lot of attempts from the Ukrainian side to attack the territory of Russian Federation. Furthermore, the Russians have already announced the evacuation of these territories, so most likely the Russians understand that the Ukrainians are planning to start the second stage of Kursk offensive, but now this is not Kursk, this is already Belgorod region, and this is going to be Belgorod offensive. Now let's move further. We have additional changes on the ground by different mappers. According to information we have, according to pro-Russian sources, the Russians managed to significantly improve their positions to the north of Peshane and to the west of Tabaevka. So all these territories were captured by the Russians, and currently there is something like a small cauldron for Ukrainian forces who are still located to the west of Kotlarovka. Most likely during the next few days the Ukrainians will be forced to fall back from this area to Peshane, because it's like very difficult to hold this territory, as we can see. Now let's move further. We have significant reports and significant updates from Toretsk, New York agglomeration. During the previous 24 hours the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. The Russians captured significant number of buildings, streets along Centralnaya streets. All these territories were captured by the Russians, and this information was confirmed by pro-Ukrainian mappers Deep State. Furthermore, according to pro-Russian sources, the Russians managed to move even further to the west and to capture the first block of the citadel of Toretsk citadel in the northeastern location. So according to the Russians, this territory was captured as well. Now let's move to New York. As you can see, we have adjusted the map as well. According to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Ukrainians abandoned their positions in the cauldron completely, and the Ukrainians moved towards the village of Nilipovka and the northern part of New York. And as you can see, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly by capturing additional territories between New York itself, between Pivnichne, Pivdinne and Gorlovka. So very big progress, and the Russians are getting closer and closer to complete the battle for New York itself. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians managed to improve their positions to the west of Yurovka, and they got very close as possible to Alexandropol and Panteleimoniivka. So most likely during the next next few days, we're gonna see the first geolocations, the first videos of clashes inside these territories, already in the border of the cities, of these villages. As for Pokrov's direction, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received anything. Just the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian forces in the southern part of Grodovka, and as I understand, this is something like artillery preparation before, let's say, additional attempt or before the beginning of full-scale assault operation in this village. Now we are moving to South Donetsk direction. We got a lot of very interesting details and updates. First of all, let's discuss this video. The Ukrainian sources published the video of how they were FPV droning the Russian forces and the Russian soldiers exactly in this area. So according to this video, the Russians during the previous few days conducted assault operation towards the main stronghold that located right on the intersections of roads between Vadiana, Ugledar and Konstantinovka. There were very heavy clashes, and during this video we might see how the Ukrainians were FPV droning the Russians. And later, the soldiers of 79th Brigades, these areas and their responsibilities, published the post that the Russians managed to physically cut the road T05-24 in this area. And according to their post, most likely this is approximately the situation in the Vadiana Ugledar direction. So most likely the Russians captured this road, this part of the road, and now the Russians are able to move further in the west to capture and to attack Vadiana and Ugledar itself. So significant progress, as you can see, from the Russian side, and as you can see, the Russians are moving further and they're not going to stop. And that's it for the video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.